that's another struggle that a lot of people have in actually reaching for their goals and performing at a peak level is the fear of introducing themselves to a higher version of themselves, because sometimes we feel like once we reach that level, we won't have anything else to live for. So, in an attempt to stay inspired, in an attempt to stay motivated, we tell ourselves that we're hustling. We tell ourselves that we're striving for something that's right within our reach, just so we can feel like we have a reason to get up tomorrow.
What do you think are like the biggest time killers?
Worry, indecision, those would probably be the two biggest things. That eat at your time, that don't necessarily serve you. Some things eat at your time, but it serves you. Prayer is time consuming, but it serves you. Training, exercise, is time consuming, but it serves you. Time with your family, that's time consuming, but it serves you. Time for yourself. Oftentimes we talk about all of the things we want to do, but many of those things are external. Many of those things are for outside entities, such as an organization that you run as an entrepreneur, or someone else in your life that you want to cater to because you love them and you want to be there for them. Very little time is allocated to self. You're someone that should be catered to as well. You're someone that deserves your time as well. Do you plan for giving yourself some of your own time in a way that recharges you, not just in a way that is conducive to you showing up the way that you want to for others? And that's something that tends not to happen. Do you make time for in the morning for yourself? Are you waking up? Are you stretching? Are you meditating? Do you eat breakfast? Do you pray? Do you go for a walk to get your thoughts organized? Right? Do you journal? Where's the time for you? Or are you just leaving enough time to wake up, take a shower, and run out the door? So I would say those things are very important. But it's less time for those things when you're spending time being indecisive, not knowing what you should be doing, not knowing where to start, spending a lot of time thinking about where to start. It's okay to spend some time with that, but paralysis of analysis is real. And the audacity of us to think that we have the time to do that, right? The arrogance and thinking we can continually put things off as if time is going to stop for us, as if the opportunity is going to always remain available to us. So the worry or the indecisiveness is what I find eats up a lot of time. And typically you don't know until you try. So, or until you speak to someone who has tried. Try to execute on it within 72 hours. Have a 72-hour execution rate. If you learn something, try to put it in place within 72 hours, or at least schedule to put it in place. Use the next 72 hours to figure out where that can fit in your life, and schedule it. So even though you may not be doing it within those 72 hours, you have scheduled some time to do it within those 72 hours, even though it may happen at a later date.
What are other activities that you can do to rewind? Not to rewind. To how you say that? Not relax, but like recharge. That was the word, recharge.
Depends on the person. Things that charge different people are different. But you definitely want to make sure that you're scheduling time to do those things, whatever it may be. But allocate the time accordingly. What does that mean? That means we overestimate what we can do in a short period of time, and we underestimate what we can do in a long period of time. If you decide I want to work out, people typically want to see results in a short period of time, and they overestimate what those results could potentially be. They want full body transformation in 90 days. You run an organization, you want full real in 90 days. Overestimating what you can do there, as opposed to saying, what would my body look like if I did 100 push-ups every day for the next year? If I did 200 push-ups every day for the next year? Or if I walked 5 miles a day every day for the next year? Kept everything else in my life the same, but I just walked every day 5 miles for the next year. What would I look like? How would I feel? My business, instead of saying I need a 90-day transformation, what would it look like if I gave my employees proper access to formidable training over the next 12 months? Ways in which they can truly self-improve. How would that impact my business? Even in your relationship. Right? You want your spouse to do something, they're not doing it. They want you to do something, you're not doing it. What tends to happen oftentimes is it's almost like a standoff. Right? You're not doing this, so I'm not doing this. We hear that a lot today. But what would happen if you said, I'm going to do everything that I can possibly do in the next 6 months to a year? Everything. And see how that impacts my relationship. As opposed to just saying, I'm going to do it for a week. Potentially a lot of the issues that we believe we currently have will either diminish or go away completely.
You see that a lot in the content that we get fed. Those challenges. I trained like this celebrity for 30 days, and this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like a million of those, like. I just didn't. At first, I thought that shit was funny and cool, but like when you see like the culture that it brings with it,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of realize how detrimental it can be.
Very. But it also happens with a short attention span. Right? Having a short attention span makes it very challenging to commit to anything. 30 days is not commitment. 30 years is.
I feel like 30 days to me is a trial. Like how you have like a trial for everything, subscriptions, like 30 days trial. You can try, see if you like it. That's before you enter the commitment.
90 days is a trial.
And what?
In anything. Not anything, but in a lot of things.
Right.
That's what you mean. Can you do it for a quarter? Then maybe you're interested. Maybe. Doesn't mean you actually are, but maybe you are. 30 days is exposure. It's not it's not a trial. You're just getting warmed up to the idea of trying something. have you really given yourself an opportunity to incorporate this into your life in a way where it has potential to become a habit? That's when it's a trial. Come on.
That whole idea, funny enough, of like how much time it takes to pick up a habit, anyways, is kind of a not a fallacy, but it's a half painted picture,
Yeah,
because not also how long you do it for, but how often do you do it in that time period.
exactly.
If your habit is to do taxes, that shit is only once every quarter.
Exactly. So again, how have you positioned yourself for this thing that you're trying to incorporate into your life to become a habit? Doing taxes once a quarter is not a habit. Studying something every day for 3 hours, that's a different story. It's like people who play sports, a lot of them remain athletes. It became a habit. Once it became a habit, they started to see the benefits of it. Whatever's whatever's rewarded is reinforced. So you keep doing it. The longer you do it, the more it becomes a part of your story. The more it becomes a part of your story, the more it becomes a part of your identity. So now you don't work out because, or you don't train because you play sports. You train because you see yourself as an athlete, even though you don't play sports anymore.
How does one change their perception of self? Because that's such like a deeply rooted thing.
How does one change their perception of self? First, it starts with truly seeing yourself. I think in order for me to change my habits, I had to notice that they were habits, and then notice, and then think about what did I get from doing this? What was the benefit of creating this habit? But also, how does having this habit hurt me? And is it worth the trade-off? Like, how does this trade-off feel to me? Typically, we don't bring that into our conscious mind. So we don't think about the trade-off between pros and cons in relation to the habits that we have. Then after I acknowledged that, it was that meaning my habits. Then it became, why do I have these habits? Like, what created this? Was this a conscious decision or was it subconscious? And if it was subconscious, what could have potentially persuaded me to do this? In my instance, it was environment. If it was conscious, then it was typically inspiration. Wanting to get to a space in my life where I wasn't just yet, but I thought I had the potential to do it. I knew I had the potential to get there. And so I thought about the things that I could potentially change in my life. In some instances, it was very theoretical, very high level concept. In other instances, it was very practical. How many hours do I have to study this? How many days do I have to do that? If I want this type of grade, I understand. How many interviews do I have to take if I want to learn how to interview them? It wasn't even about getting a job, right? Because you can have a job and still constantly be interviewed. just because you want to get better, you want to become more comfortable in that space. That was me. I wasn't looking for a new position. I just wanted to be comfortable having conversations with someone that was supposedly that was placed in a position for me to perceive them as my superior. Right? So, in understanding where those habits came from, then why it, why did this source affect me so much? So if it was a habit that I created subconsciously due to environment, me adapting to the environment, why did I allow the environment to affect me to the point where I began to adapt this habit? Right? And then it becomes, why is that important? Because maybe this habit doesn't reflect my character. Maybe this habit is a tactic of survival mode. And anything that's a tactic of survival mode is something that doesn't help me thrive. The road of survival is a dead end. It's a dead end road. Because all you do is survive. So once you've mastered that, then you just exist at that point. You don't know how to take it to the next level. And that was the reason why transformation was important to me. Because I wanted to soar in my life. I wanted to grow consistently. And when I put that idea up against the ideas that the environment was presenting to me, my idea resonated more with me. But I understood that in order to get there, there was some change that needed to happen. Because I did see some of the teachings from my environment being instilled within me. In other words, I adopted some of the teachings of my environment, many of which weren't going to serve me in my quest to thrive. So I had to change it. So really it's a process of getting back to self for me. And once I had a better idea of who I was, what I was and what I wasn't, I could clearly see who I wanted to be. And then do a gap analysis. I want to be this person, this version of myself. I already think I'm that. I just don't behave like that. And chances are I don't behave like that because I haven't given myself a goal that forces me to transform. I'm only giving myself goals that the person that I show up now as can do. I'm not giving myself goals that are going to stretch me, to reintroduce myself to myself as a greater version of myself. So I started to establish new goals for myself that would stretch me. And then I reverse engineered what would it take for me to get there. And in creating that plan, I also plan to be flexible. And that's just another way of saying preparing to be wrong, preparing to pivot, preparing to be corrected. So in me planning, or me strategizing on how to get to the goal, I consciously left room for God's plan. Because I knew that it would overpower mine.
Why do you think people struggle already? Like the first step to self acceptance, the knowledge of self. So like really first seeing who you are before you can make the changes.
Because it's hurtful. People struggle with starting the process of self awareness because it's hurtful. It's like exercising. Why don't people do it consistently? Why do people quit? Because it hurts. It's painful. You have to fall in love with the struggle of improving yourself in order to enjoy that. A lot of people don't find that burning sensation in their body enjoyable when you're training, when you're trying to get to a new peak, when you're trying to really push your body to transform. A lot of people don't enjoy that process.
How can you make it more? What do you got to tell yourself to start enjoying it? What do you got to do? What do you got to?
If you keep the goal in mind, I think that's helpful. And a goal doesn't necessarily need money or materialistic item. It could be intangible. It could be who you want to be. It could be health. Right? They say when you have your health, you have a bunch of problems. When you don't have your health, you have none. It puts life in perspective for you. Where do you want to live or not? It becomes very simple. But it's always like that. It's always that simple. We complicate it. Because when you have wealth, you have options. And when you have options, it could be dangerous because you treat everything as an option, something that you can cop out of. That's what it means to have options. You can do this or that. One may be more important than the other, but you don't necessarily feel like you have to do that. You have options. Until life doesn't give you an option. Until life says this is what needs to happen, or else. And then you say, okay, we're going to do this. Because people always rise to the occasion. Typically, not always, but people typically rise to the occasion. If there's something that you feel like you couldn't do, now you have to do it, people typically rise to the occasion. Look at these guys that don't work out. They're coming down the block, the building is on fire. Somebody they love is on the 13th floor, and they scale the building to get them out. You never climbed a tree before, and now you can scale a building. But why does it take for your mother to be in the house, nearly about to be burnt to death, for you to decide you want to introduce yourself to your greater self? That becomes a question. Why does it take that for you to perform at your peak? Imagine if you did that all the time. What makes a person extraordinary compared to a person that is ordinary? A person that's extraordinary or deemed extraordinary, because no one is really extraordinary, is just a person that does what other people do on occasion every day. Yo, I stay up late when I have a paper. I stay up late when I want to finish an assignment. I stay up late when I want to finish a beat. I stay up late because it's Saturday and it's a party pop. This person is putting in those kind of hours every day on something that's actually productive in their lives. It's not occasional.
Right.
If you do a little bit more every day, then imagine where you would be in a year. If you went to the gym, like I typically do these amount of reps. If you just did one more rep every day for the next 3 months, and then did one more rep every day for the next 2 months, where would you be by the end of the year? Where would you be in 5 years if you just kept doing that? But it seems that typically we have to be forced to do those things. It has to be an external incentive for us to say, I'm going to rise to the occasion. Why? And that reason is different for most of us. But typically it comes down to fear. It came down to fear for me, for sure. And that's another thing. Another struggle that a lot of people have in actually reaching for their goals and performing at a peak level is the fear of introducing themselves to a higher version of themselves, because sometimes we feel like once we reach that level, we won't have anything else to live for. So, in an attempt to stay inspired, in an attempt to stay motivated, we tell ourselves that we're hustling. We tell ourselves that we're striving for something that's right within our reach. Just so we can feel like we have a reason to get up tomorrow. Not realizing that when you, that higher version of yourself that you're avoiding, that version of you has goals too. You just don't see what those goals are now because you're refusing to step into that position. So, fear. Fear is why people refuse to take the first step. Typically. It was for me.
Fear of, because you mentioned one. What other fears do you think most plagues most people?
Fear of being wrong.
And why do you think that is?
Because in this instance, it's a defining moment. Fear of being an imposter, which most of us are at some point in our lives. The question is, do you want to remain there? Because you feel like an imposter. We have imposter syndrome, and subconsciously, we know we're performing in a way that's not true to who we are. You don't only have imposter syndrome when you're trying to reach for something higher. You can also have imposter syndrome when you're trying to reach for something lower. Your spirit is telling you you don't belong here. You can do more. Or your conscious mind is telling you you don't belong here. This is too good of a place for you. You stepping out of bounds. You breaking the code. You being disrespectful. Even though you're there because your spirit knows you should be there. And that's why it's tricky. But either way, you expose yourself to yourself. This identity that you've crafted for yourself is just that. It's just a persona. It's made up. It's it's an art piece. It's theater. It's not real. It's not really who you are. And having to confront that, having to confront yourself with that on a consistent basis, because it's every day. It's not like you have this conversation with yourself one time and you shift. Sometimes that happens, but oftentimes it doesn't because it's very painful. It's very painful to say, I'm going to break up with this woman that I've been with for the last 5 years because I haven't really been being who I am and reaching for what it is that I want to reach for in any aspect of my life, including my intimate relationships. Because you've been with her for 5 years, you do love her. She just may not be the one for you, and it's hard for you to face that. Or he may not be the one for you, it's hard for you to face that. This job that you've been going to every day, these friends that you hang out with, that you've been with all every day. It's hard to face them and say, yo, I've been lying this whole time. Sorry for wasting your time. And it's even harder to say it to yourself because subconsciously we understand that this is our lives. That was very important. This is my life. So it's important that I make it what I want it to be. We know that on the subconscious level. But consciously we find reasons not to do that. Life tends to present us with options that distort that understanding, that distort our perspective. So in early stages of our lives, we find ourselves moving away from that understanding. And as we age, we find ourselves trying to come back to it. But it's all the time in between where life exists. Right? Don't Typically you're yourself up until what, 7? That's when your subconscious mind is developed. You may be who you are into teen years, maybe 12, 13. You spend a lot of time being someone you're not. By the time we typically stop caring about what other people think about us, what are we, late 30s, early 40s? It's a long time in between. For us to figure it out. And oftentimes, by the time because of that, we start to psych ourselves out in regards to certain things. By the time you turn 40, chances are you put yourself in some binding positions. And maybe you've done that being someone who you actually are not. So now there's a lot of baggage to release. That's a hurtful process. It's a growth opportunity, but it's a hurtful process. It was hurtful for me to have a conversation with my mother and tell her how all of the things that happened during our childhood impacted me negatively. And seeing her reaction to that was a hurtful experience. It was a hurtful experience to see some phone numbers in my phone and hit delete. because I knew that what our relationship was rooted in wasn't truth to me. It's hurtful for me to look in the mirror and say, yo, what you've been doing for the past 10 years is not really who you are. Your mannerisms haven't been reflecting your heart. It's time to change. It's hurtful for me to say, yo, I'm not going to pursue music, at least not in the capacity that I always wanted to. That was a desire. It didn't make sense, so I didn't do it. My mind said no, but my heart said yes. And now the process of aligning them has been a turbulent process. It hasn't been easy. You can love it. You can do it. Doesn't mean you have to make a life from it. Then it's like, what's the point of doing it? That back and forth is an uncomfortable experience. But doing what I know feels better and makes more sense is what I tend to go with. It feels better to know that I can relay this message in a different way, and because I'm relaying it in a different way, it could potentially be more impactful and thus resonate more with the audience that I'm interested in speaking. With the line of work that I'm interested in being in. It's a hurtful experience to do. It's one thing for somebody else to call you up. It's another thing for you to call yourself out. Know that it's real. Seeking the truth with yourself, having that argument with yourself, because you're more than one person. We're all more than one person. Being a human is a dynamic experience. You're one person when you go to work, you're one person in front of your mom, you're another person with your lover, you're another person with your friends, you're a whole nother person when you're by yourself. So, it's challenging. I say that to say you can lie to yourself. Your ego is strong enough to help you get to a place where you tell yourself a lie that you actually do. For that reason, it becomes challenging to confront yourself, because it's a process to get to the truth. But the whole way through is critique. And nobody can critique you like you can, because you know the things you think that you don't say. You know the things you do that nobody else knows you do. You know when you procrastinated and they didn't notice. They thought you were being patient, but you knew it was procrastination. They thought that you were an even-spirited person, but you know that you're an arrogant asshole. You just know when to be quiet. They take your silence or your tasteful comments and knowing when and when not to speak as maturity. but you know it's being shot. You know it's not wanting to say the wrong thing. So you purposely choose not to speak very often.
You see that a lot with people around you? Or is that more towards yourself?
Both. But that I only know that about people around me in conversation with people around me. But I know that mainly with myself. We all know that. I don't know what you're thinking right now, but you do. You can present yourself in a way that gives me one impression, but that may not really match what you're thinking. That's what I mean. You can lie to me, but you know. That's what I may not know yet, but you know. It's the same thing you can do with yourself. You can lie to yourself. Your conscious mind doesn't know it's a lie, but subconsciously, you know it's a lie. The objective is to get back to the subconscious to be able to confront yourself. Because confronting your conscious mind is not confronting yourself. Oftentimes, that's just another way to make up a logical lie.
You start to rationalize things.
Yeah. So,
Just a repeated why things are the way they are
yeah,
until you find the lie.
yeah. It doesn't have to literally be the question why. You can bounce around, but keep questioning. Why did I do this? I did this for this. Why was that important? It was important because of this. Yeah, but you had this over here. Why didn't you pay attention to that? What was it about this thing that was so much better than this thing? If they both give you this thing. Oh, I wanted this thing because of this. And then you keep going. How did that thing help you more than that thing? Actually, this thing, you would have had what you got from there and there's something else. So why not go with this one? That's the conversation you have with yourself. So it goes back to thinking being a byproduct of life. But it should, in my opinion, be a part of life, not a byproduct. Not having every decision you make be a split moment decision. I never thought about this before, but now I'm placed with I'm confronted with the situation and I need to make a decision. So I make a decision. Do you think about your future? Is your future, do you have a solid plan for your future? Are your actions dictated by you in a way that's in accordance to a plan that you've created for your life? Do you know what the price is of this future that you want to have? How do you pay it every day? How does it feel when you pay it every day? Do you like to pay it every day?
What if the answer is no?
How much do you want the gold? Is the gold true to you? Because if the goal is true to you, chances are the price becomes easy. It becomes easy to pay. So it becomes more enjoyable. If it's true, I want a six pack. Do you really want it, or does it just look nice on other people? You think it'll look focus on you. Do you really want a six pack? Do you really want to be successful? Or you just want to look successful? You don't really want to be successful. You just want a nice car. You want a nice timepiece. You don't even know why that timepiece is prestigious. It just looks nice. You just want a yacht. But you don't actually want to be successful. You don't want to contribute to society in a real way. That's not the motive. The motive is for you to live well. And if the motive is for you to live well, there's nothing wrong with that. Are you willing to pay the price required to live well? Because the price may make it seem as if you're not living well. In some of our minds, living well is laid up all day, eating ice cream, you know, on the beach somewhere, and that's living well. It's not getting up every day and doing all of the things that are required to make money. You don't need money to chill on the beach. A car is a car. It gets you from one place to the other. You can do it in a Lamborghini or you can do it in a Ford Focus. Why do you want the Lamborghini? Lamborghini typically is a status symbol for most people. They don't even know how the car works. Same with timepieces. You want a Rolex, why? You want an Audemars, why? You want a Patek, why? You want a Baccarat, why? You don't know anything about these watches. So you want to pay $200,000 just so somebody can look at your wrist and say it's nice. They don't even know why it's nice. It's like going to the gym. A lot of young boys going to the gym thinking that it's going to get a woman's attention. And the only people that really give them attention are other dudes. Why? Because the other dude knows what it took to get those last two abs at the bottom. She doesn't, typically. Most women don't even know what the difference is. They don't even know a 4-pack, 6-pack, 8-pack. All they know is you have a pack. It's the dude that's looking at the details of your body. It's the dude that's looking at the curvature in your shoulders because he understands what that means. Is that the crowd you want to be in, or you just want a woman? Not because it's going to change necessarily what you do, but it could potentially change how you feel about doing it. And that's the part that's true. The truth changes how you feel about it. So if the answer is no, perhaps you should question how true this is. The answer to do I like the price that I'm paying for this is no. You should think about it. Because it may not be worth it. Chasing this business may not be worth sacrificing relationships with your friends, especially if this business is not true to you. It doesn't resonate with something that's real for you. Maybe you shouldn't sacrifice your friends and your relationships for it. Maybe you should find something that allows you to do both. Maybe you don't really want to be an entrepreneur. It's okay to have a job.